Hey, it is a Tuesday still. This is Trekland HQ, and we are live. Yes, yes. RIP plus 10, Leonard Nimoy, with today's special guest, Bonnie Moss. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 389. Wow. Boom. Yes. TTL today with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and especially Trekland Treks as we get back into warmer months. It can be your customized away mission around SoCal. Any of the 50 potential live action Star Trek film sites here in Greater Southern California. We'll pick out 4 in advance. I'll get you there. I'll help you do it. Do it upright when you come out to visit. But here we are again for some more sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you for your patience today. A couple of little tech glitches, but here we are. And again, it's a time when we can take a breather on current Star Trek and look around at the calendar. And I'm a little ahead of the game here by a week, but it's been right about 10 years since we lost Leonard Nimoy. And I felt like jumping in to talk about this. And I hope you jump in and talk about it with me too. If you are new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, hey, we've got a wonderful chat audience over here. I hope we still have our Europeans. It's getting kind of late. But we do this time of day every week, so we can have a lot of the globe in with us live in the chat. So the TTLers are awesome. If you're coming into us new for the first time, welcome. You are free to lurk, but, introduce yourself if you feel like it. Let us know what's going on. How's the weather? How's the trek where you are? It's all good. Just a reminder that if you are coming in on Facebook, you're only seeing the Facebook comments, okay? But if you're on YouTube or Twitch, you're going to see all the comments. And if you're on YouTube, you're going to be able to cross my palm with silver. We have Super Chat here. You can hit the Super Chat button, and I appreciate anything you want to throw in our streaming pot. It's awesome. I really appreciate that. And if you're watching us, if you're watching us later, not live right now on YouTube, hey, appreciate it. Leave a comment below. Keep the conversation going. And maybe you can join us sometime on a Tuesday upcoming right about this same time and be here with our live chat and community. Now, normally I have a topic. I get off on a soapbox and then we dive into the chat afterwards. But today we're in guest mode to talk about Leonard. And, it's been a decade since he passed. And a lot of folks we talk with about Adam Nimoy, his son, did his documentary, has a new book out called The Most Human. And he's been doing a book tour with that. But here for the very personal brand that we do here on Trekland Tuesdays Live, I wanted to have a friend, a guest today who, I've known here for about, over 10 years now, but also someone who knew Leonard off and on. And yes, as a fan, but then as the years went by, much more than that, as a collector of his work, as a patron of his theater, in so many ways. And so without further ado, I hope if you haven't had a chance to meet her at a con somewhere along the way, we'll get ready because I'm going to bring in my friend Bonnie right now. Bonnie, thanks.
Hey, Larry.
Thanks for joining us thanks for your patience getting over the hoop there with the tech. And thanks for joining us on the Trek Files. It doesn't seem like it's been 10 years since we lost Leonard, and there was a lot of, reflection and all at the time. It was kind of a paradigm shift for Star Trek. I remember everybody thinking, wow. And he wasn't the first to go. Gene was obviously, we lost, and Dee, but and Jimmy too. But it was kind of a paradigm shift when we lost our Spock. And anyway, I just want everybody to tell, where's your mind these days as we're thinking? I tried to introduce you there, and if I left something out, let me know. But I think of you when we think about Leonard. And and the unique kind of relationship you had with him. I've got some pictures here I'll show in a minute that you've shared over the
Oh,
years.
right.
But
Right.
where's your mind right now as we get to 10 years?
It's hard to believe, Larry. I mean, it's that old adage, in a way, it seems like yesterday, and in another way, it seems like it's been long, long ago. So I vacillate between the two in thinking about it seems long, long ago because I miss new content and new input and new creativity and new contacts, from him. And then again, it seems like yesterday because he's still so very much with us with the work that he did, expansive work that he did prior to his passing. So it's a real, both personal and professional, knowing he's very much with us with his legacy, but missing what he could be doing now.
Yeah. Well, so by way of introduction, let me show everybody what I was scooping up here.
Mhm.
Let me see how, yeah, we'll keep us here. So this is the photo I love. If people want to know your,
Wow.
your
I
Star
haven't
Trek
changed a
cred,
bit. I haven't changed a bit.
I tried. It was a black and white photo, right? Or
No, it was a color
it
photo.
was color. Okay,
Photo.
okay. It's just
I'm
faded a little
old,
bit.
Larry, but not quite that old.
Well, I
Okay.
have black and white pictures too. We did, but I thought I had tried to colorize this or recolorize. Anyway, but here you are. This is what, your college dorm room?
That is my college dorm room, probably 1977,
Oh, you're gonna do that.
78.
Okay, you're gonna put years
Yeah.
on it.
Well,
Okay.
I have to explain the difference. But the one reason I point that out is this is when Star Trek was on off the air, but there was nothing forthcoming. There was
Mhm.
hardly even a talk of a movie, the occasional whispers. So Star Trek, for many, for several reasons, was considered one and done. And here I was still carrying the
Yeah.
torch with my Nimoy poster in my dorm room.
Well,
And
it,
and so
it was
I
considered one and done by the stupid outside world that had not seen
correct.
the paradigm that Star Trek was about to, the mold that was about to break open and create something new. Because
Yes, there was no
you were not
product out there.
alone. We were
Yes.
just perceived as the vast minority. But yes.
Yes, yes, I agreed. I guess I mean in terms of public product, there was
Yeah.
nothing on, but those of us, yes, lurking in the shadows, Larry, we were always hopeful that a return would come in some incarnation, and we were rewarded for our loyalty. All of those you've referred to them as the fallow years, and yes, they were fallow in some ways, but there was always hope, and we enjoyed.
Mhm.
And of course, obviously, no social media, no other ways to stay in touch with one another,
Paper and
which is one.
stamps, baby. That's all it was. Because who
That's
could
right.
afford a long distance phone call that back then? So yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And we would communicate, there would people don't know what chain letters are, but you'd do chain letters. You'd put a bunch of Star Trek photographs or clippings in a mailing and send it to one fan, and they in turn would readdress it and send it to another fan, and they in turn would readdress it and
And
send it to another fan.
and SACEs were the stamps, or SACEs were the currency, self-addressed stamped envelopes. Because
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
correct,
yep, yep.
correct.
I'm trying to get this where I can. There we go. Um, so there you go. But see, this is what I mean. Lots of fans were the sit at home and watch and be a fan. But what I always like, you were serious, and
Yes.
you would see. Well, I love. I guess I had these a little, but you showed your fandom and appreciation of Leonard in a lot of ways, and one of them was going to see him at his shows when what this is Vincent, right? When his
Um,
own play.
this Vincent, correct, correct. This was the 1979. He toured with Vincent for several years, probably from 78 to 83 ish. This was in 1979 in Washington D.C. And yes, and a slight backstory. When I started watching the original series, I would buy the movie magazines to find out articles about Leonard or Bill Shatner or the series itself. There were contests related to the series that were in these
Yeah.
movie magazines. Um, so I'd started collecting on Star Trek, and then that narrowed down to Leonard Nimoy because I found him to be the most interesting and to my you know,
Hmm.
adolescent self, the most interesting and the most seemingly accessible. And so, yes, when Star Trek ended, I wanted to continue knowing more about this man and his talents. And so I did go up to Washington D.C. to see him in Vince. This is backstage, as a matter of fact. And I think one of the things early on that helped build a relationship between Leonard and I is the first thing I put in front of him to sign after we talked, and that was an old friend back between us named Marilyn. I have no idea where she is now, but she was in the Navy, and she was based in Washington D.C. at that time. Um, the first thing I put in front of him on this occasion was a still from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It had just come out. And so it wasn't a Spock photo that I thrust in front of him and said, "Oh, I'm so happy to." I said, "Mr. Nimoy, I'm thrilled to have seen you in Invasion of the Body Snatchers." And wow, that got, you know. And he looked at it because, again, no eBay, no Etsy, no anything. I had written the studio. Do you have any photos or materials from Invasion of the Body Snatchers? I did that during Star Trek. Back then, studios didn't care. They weren't so proprietary. They were going to throw this stuff away.
Right.
Okay, here's this little girl in North Carolina once said, we'll give it to her,
Right.
get the PR department to send this crap to her, So that's was the core of my collection was, nowadays this wouldn't happen. This was 60s, 70s. If you wrote a
Yeah.
sweet letter, you could possibly be rewarded. So Leonard's looking at this picture from Invasion of the Body Snatchers and saying, "Where did you get this?"
Uh-huh.
Because it wasn't mainstream to have a still or a publicity photo.
Well,
And I
and
said, I
yeah.
wrote the studio for it. He had never seen it. He hadn't even seen it at that point. And
Well,
he was like,
as we've gotten into on the Trek Files, a lot of times those promotion departments could be really stingy with that kind of thing. On one hand, they would send things that they were desperate to build an audience, but once they had popularity, it was like they didn't feel like they needed to send anything. It was kind of
right.
bass backwards
And
thing.
it would never happen now. Maybe they took pity on what they thought was this old country girl from North Carolina. I do not know. And I am from North Carolina, if everyone out there is wondering why I'm talking this way.
If I didn't say that, then I should have. But um, this was a different. This is still now. Vincent was his one man play he wrote and starred in about Vincent Van Gogh,
Correct.
just to catch everybody up. Another
Right, right.
creative and tortured genius. Maybe this is
Correct.
another. This is another showing of another run of Vincent.
Yes, this is in 1980, and this was in Atlanta, Georgia. And on both occasions, I was able to go backstage. I'm showing him something that I had done for him. It was a calligraphy and some artwork, what have you. And I'm pointing it out, pointing different aspects of it out because it was kind of a summation of his life. This little drawing represents your family. This one represents your
Yeah.
recording career. This represents blah, blah, blah. So I'm, pointing at, and he really, really liked it. And the manager of the Peachtree Playhouse in Atlanta told me later, Leonard went back to his dressing room and hung that up. So I was thought that was very, very sweet.
That was there. You go. And now, okay, fast forward a few years.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Um, this was in 2010. I hope I have that right.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, you did. Yeah.
2010, at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art in North Adams, Massachusetts. This was Leonard's big debut. He had been his photography had been shown in other smaller venues and in some museum and some other art councils and synagogues and things like that. But this was his real breakthrough into the mainstream with his photography. And the Massachusetts Museum of MassMoCA, I'll refer to it as that, gave him exhibition space for his Secret Selves exhibition. and I ended up being the primary sponsor of this exhibition, for which he was most grateful.
Wow,
And we're at a reception out on a patio, and
very
um,
cool.
and naive me, once again, I was invited to the reception, of course, and had access to Leonard most of that weekend that this, you know, debuted. And I was taking photos, and in fact, I'd handed my camera to someone, and also at the reception and everything. Towards the very end of the reception, somebody came up to me and said, "Well, you must really rate." And I went, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "Because Leonard had said no cameras, and he's let you take a photograph of everything."
Well, there you go.
There you go. So
There you
bless you,
go.
Leonard.
Let me see. Gosh, I wonder what I have next here. Just a
Oh
couple more.
God.
Here's this is what one of the last or the last of his creation.
Yes. Yes, indeed. This was his last convention appearance in Chicago in 2013.
Okay,
His last appearance was supposed to be, I think, in Vegas, and then he had a medical hiccup, and things got, um, he was supposed to do Chicago and then Vegas. That was it. He had a hiccup in Chicago, a medical problem, had to cancel Chicago, went on and did Vegas, but then promised, "I will come back to Chicago. I'm not going to cancel and not make that up."
and
So
that's
that's how his last appearance ended up being in Chicago, then Vegas.
yeah.
And this is us holding up the photo op line because I came around the corner and he's like, "Bonnie," I'm like, so we ended up talking, and of course the line is going on, and the photographer, I could tell what was going through his mind. He was like, "I'm not going to tell Leonard Nimoy to hurry up.
Right,
I'm not
right.
going to tell Leonard
Well,
Nimoy."
you're that person. You're that person holding up the
I am
line.
that guilty, guilty. So we that was a
Yeah,
wonderful exchange there.
mhm,
And I was the one who suggested, I said, "We have so many face forward pictures. Can we do something else?" And he went, "Sure," in
yeah,
turn.
yeah.
So,
So what do you wear? Is he laughing about? He's got you up on stage here.
oh gosh, Larry, I didn't know. I'd forgotten I had shared some of these. So wonderful. This was in 2009 in Boston, at
Oh,
Boston
okay,
Fan X, I believe. I
okay,
am wearing a T-shirt of his Full Body Project, which was another photography
right.
kind of subject of his. He didn't have a separate exhibition for it, but it was one of his thematic photography
Okay.
pursuits.
I'm gonna bump it. Now, this is after he passed, or you'd been planning this, right? The show in North Carolina
Yes,
with
these
Rich. Yeah,
these photos are all of my personal collection, and I've added to it since then. I own all of these Nimoy photographs, and some more have been added. If you want to see, you probably can't see it very well, but my whole wall behind me is Nimoy photographs.
yeah, that,
I got into
yeah,
his photography early on. Yes, um, I part of my access to Leonard was through two people, one of which was Gary Hassan, who told me, who's a convention fixture or
right,
was for many years,
right,
and still facilitates appearances by a number of the stars. And he had told me, "Leonard likes you, but I'll get something to Leonard if you want me to." The other person for whom increased my access to Leonard, because again, Leonard's in California. I'm in North Carolina. Okay. We're not crossing paths a whole lot, except
right.
through these exhibitions or conventions, which Michelson was Leonard's gallerist, still
Mhm.
is, actually. He has a gallery in Northampton, Massachusetts. He and Leonard were extremely close. I think you've mentioned the possibility of getting up with Rich at some point.
Yes,
Um,
Trekophiles, folks, stay tuned for that.
Okay, and that would be
Hopefully,
a
yeah,
fascinating show, folks, because Rich is as multi-talented as Leonard was. He's a poet. He's a children's book author. He runs this gorgeous museum. I have been fortunate to
right.
go up there and see it. And he and Leonard probably exchanged. He told me once he counted up the emails he and Leonard exchanged over the years, and it was thousands. It was well over
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
mean, so um,
And then this is
he
what you planned when he did pat right at 10 years ago, right? This is the show there near you.
Yes, Leonard had given me permission to do my own exhibition with Rich of his photography.
Mhm.
This was, and I appreciated that deeply. And so this is the exhibition that I facilitated, and you can see my name, Rich Michelson's name, and the Wooten family and the other people are the local. people who got behind this exhibition.
Yeah.
Leonard gave me permission to do this exhibition in 2014. Unfortunately, he did not live to see it. It ended up being the first exhibition following his passing.
Yeah. It was just, I mean, it wasn't planned that way, but it was just like the March after the February.
Correct.
Yeah, this time. Well, that's what I had pulled just to get back to it. But here's what I wanted to talk to you about. And it goes to my first instinct is it's like, well, on one hand, people say, oh, well, we all love Spock and we all love Leonard Nimoy. And it has been 10 years. And there was a lot of, when he passed, there was a lot of reflecting on his life and his career. And
Hmm.
I think we did some, Spock, obviously, and all that and building the franchise. But what I want to like go back here just for all the fans who were newer, and we talk about you talked about it, go back to paper and stamp days and the early days and all of that. But there you were in your dorm room, and that was 70. So that was like 10 years after the show had been on TV, and it was reruns, and it was not like anything else.
Hmm.
And and the whole fan fiction zine movement was 90% women.
Hmm.
That was the core thing behind people. This is one of my soapboxes. This is about how Star Trek fandom is so much about the feminine side and women, and a lot of that was Spock and Vulcan and all that. Was that? But there's times when you don't strike me as, like, at that time, even as a lot of, like, you were serious enough to want to go follow him in his theater and follow his photography. That one, I
Hmm.
didn't get it out single, but that one lateral one was like when he was first. Tell people about that. He was first selling photographs. Like, what? He'd mount them and sell them for like $3. What was that?
Correct. It was through his fan club, and another great guest for you to have at some point, if she's interested, it would be Louise Stange, who was
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah.
president of his fan club. And Louise and I are still in touch with one another to this day. And I joined that fan club in like 68, 67, 68. I still have my membership cards. They put out annual yearbooks that were fabulous. I mean, they remain fabulous all through Louise doing her little equipment in her basement, or her out of her home. None of these publications were, but they were awesome. They were frankly awesome, very well done. So yes, you stayed in, the fan clubs were another conduit to meeting other fans,
Right.
because they always had a newsletter or a yearbook that had pen pal lists. If you want to talk to other fans, here are names and addresses of people who have said they're interested in talking to you about Leonard Nimoy,
Right.
Star Trek. So
Again.
the fan clubs
Yeah.
introduced you to that other aspect of Leonard too. So you could have the best of both worlds. You could have Star Trek and Leonard
Yeah.
Nimoy.
And in a Trek Files mode, this is again where I call it paper and stamps fandom. It's like all the impulses that the internet and social media would let you have, but we were just in slow motion. All we had was paper and stamps, but all the impulse to get together and have community way beyond what anything in entertainment or whatever had been. Like you'd have like marketing or political mailing lists, and that was about the closest. And that was all like us to you, But the
Hmm.
thing about having community, that's how you had community in the pre-digital days. But here's what I want to ask you though. So we have all this history and dates and names and places, and this is the way things were, and here's where we were. But what was the core thing? A lot of times, oh yes, it was women driving the fan fiction, and you weren't a fan. You didn't have any inclination to do fan fiction, did you?
Oh, well, I probably had the inclination. I didn't have a talent.
Okay.
Um,
Well, some of the fan fiction writers probably had more inclination than talent also.
My
But
inclination was
that
more in the
passion, yeah,
collecting. I have so
yeah,
many things from when the original series was on the air, the magazines, the promotional
yeah, yeah.
materials, the stills, things like that.
So
So,
here's my whether the passion came through like through fan fiction writing or the passion came through collecting
mhm.
or whatever. Even back in those days, trying to do makeup, trying to do costuming, trying to build props, as it is still. What? Why? Especially why Leonard? And I would even say like what even beyond the show is off, and now and it's but you were following his theater career and and supporting
Mhm.
his photography in a little way, and then more and more as the years went. what was it about Leonard that attracted you and that following and made Spock? We can say, oh, made Spock and helped make Star Trek, but to somebody now who comes to Star Trek, and there's
Mhm.
18, I'm kidding here, there's not
Mhm.
47 series, but there's so many actors, there's so many series, and we intellectually know, oh, of course it all started with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy and Scotty. But what was it? What was the thing? And then they got you, and then also made you want to hang around for all the years for Leonard as well as
Wow.
Star.
Yeah, that's a interesting question, but also a very complex question. I think many of us segued from one into the other into the other. Now, maybe some people didn't go as far with it as others, but it started with Star Trek and Spock. You know, interesting character, a character that women found attractive. I don't know. I think it was a combination of the physicality of him. I think it was a combination of the character being mystical in some ways. You can't get through to him, but I bet I could. That kind of fantasy aspect of things. And I went through, when Star Trek was on the air from like 10 to 13 or 9 to 13. So my 9-year-old self was quite different than my 13-year-old self looking at Star Trek.
Yeah.
Before it was like the primary colors and it popped off the screen and color television was new and that's drove you in. But back to your question was I think it was the character was so well written and well developed. Then you wanted to know about the person who was playing him. Is he just as interesting? Is he just, and the acting, you could even my, you know, infant self could recognize this guy's he's a good actor. This is good perform.
Mhm.
And I would watch the Emmys every year and be so angry when he didn't win. And I've even researched who was nominated with him, and you'd be surprised. And who won. And a lot of them that won, if you went on the street today and said, "How about that, Joe?" Like they wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you go on the street, and even someone who didn't like Star Trek and didn't know much about Leonard Nimoy would know the name Leonard Nimoy. I'm kind of dancing around, but I think you started with Star Trek, then you went to Spock, then you went to Leonard, then you went to wanting to know more about him and see his talent in other venues. And again, people went in different directions. For some people, it stopped at Spock. For some people, it stopped at I like Leonard Nimoy's poetry, but I don't necessarily have the drive to to go see him in a play. So I think some of it is personal preference, some of it is um, that your degree of interest
Well,
and how far you were willing to take it.
yeah. Well, I guess the other thing is like, so you were collecting he was making baby steps. It just kills me how he was cutting his own mats and selling them for $3 or whatever through his
$3,
bank and all that.
$3.
But like, what
And,
was it?
and that first photo I purchased for $3 was recently appraised at 4,000.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Yeah.
Good
Okay. Well, aside from the good investment,
Good investment for a 10-year-old kid. Okay.
yeah. No, I'm just saying, we think about Leonard as an actor and maybe director, and yeah, Star Trek 3 and 4, but 3 Men and a Baby and the other things. But those sides of him, the poet and the singer, and we make they make fun of Leonard doing his album the way it was a big fad for a lot of actors to
And
do
he
albums.
would put that in quotes. Even he would put that in
Yeah,
quotes.
but still, The Hobbit, people love the Hobbit song,
Yes.
Bilbo Baggins and everything he did. But just those other aspects of him besides Spock and acting, and I'm going to say the photography mostly because he did do that lifelong. Um,
The
and I know,
poetry. The
well,
poetry was
poetry
early.
too, but I
Hmm.
think I think the photography was what he felt like. Was there something beyond? I mean, did it just be, oh, this is Leonard and I love Spock and I want to support him, or was there something about his photography on its own? If you didn't know who was the photographer, the artist behind it,
I think my initial foray into it was based on let me see what catches
right,
his interest,
right,
and what this is about. But then I became a devotee. Um, he used to refer to me as that, a devotee. You're a devotee, Bonnie.
Not
Okay,
a
I'll write
fan, a
that. Not a
devotee.
fan of devotee.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So yes, I mean it's you don't know what conscious or unconscious things, bring you into something. But I think once I went into his photography, it too held my interest. It wasn't like, okay, he's a so-so. And in terms of his photography career, someone sent Rich Leonard's photographs, and I don't know whether it was Susan Nimoy or someone that they mutually knew through their artistic endeavors, without attaching Leonard's name to it, and asked Rich's opinion of it, and he could
Oh,
speak more to this.
a blind
So
taste
because
test.
he yes, and Rich said, I want to know more about this photographer.
Mhm.
Rich is very discerning. His gallery is very, he carries, things from Dr. Seuss. I mean, his children's book illustrators. He was
Mhm.
friends. He and remains friends with a number of really high name. I won't bust his balloon, but and he's a very modest guy. He ain't gonna come out with this stuff. But anyway, and he was intrigued, and he did not have a relationship with Leonard, at that point, and he wanted to know about this photographer. So I guess I'm saying it had merit. It had merit, and even to my undiscerning eye, it was intriguing. It
Because
was
his
interesting.
the photo books that I remember when Shakina came out,
Mhm.
it was somewhat controversial, and like all of his photo
Yes,
books are, yeah, uh,
yes.
on body forms and things. Listen,
Oh,
let me,
absolutely.
yeah,
Mhm.
let me ask one more thing, and then I wanna hit the chat here,
Okay.
and see what people are, because I already see some good comments. Part of what this was we, Star Trek and culture, pop culture loves anniversaries. We love to do everything around anniversary. So it's 10 years, but what I was thinking was, do you think we look at Leonard, or we have we gained anything, or any new insights, or something that's fallen off that should be in the 10 years? Like, we did all of this when he passed.
Mhm.
What do you think comes up at the artificial 10-year marker? But is there something else that you think, that you've thought about in the time since, that maybe is new, or that you think the world should know, or anybody that professes to be a
Right.
fan of Star Trek and Spock and Leonard, that maybe has not, you know.
Right. I think those that are maybe new to the franchise and all of its more recent incarnations, you've got to give Leonard, as even if you weren't into the original series or can't get beyond the cheesy special effects or whatnot, Leonard created the template from which Zachary Quinto and Ethan Peck based their Spocks. So even if you're not into old Spock, old TOS, the template has been established, and I'm seeing Leonard and Zachary Quinto's portrayal and Ethan Peck's portrayal,
Mhm.
and both of them have even said we want to do Leonard, but not do Leonard. But
Sure.
you have to start from that core. So I guess part of it is an appreciation that what Leonard put into Spock persists in these new incarnations of Spock.
Right.
And so you've got to see Leonard in Zachary Quinto. You've got to see Leonard. I mean, you do. If you've, so I
Mhm.
think props still need to be paid for Quinto Spock and Ethan Peck Spock, both of whom I've met, by the way, and was able to convey to them, at least to Zachary Quinto, how Leonard was. He knew this, but he needed, was so appreciative of his take and
Right.
portrayal and his friendship. And he was very appreciative. And Ethan Peck said, "Tell me Leonard stories."
I was going
You
to say,
know,
Zach got to know Leonard and was
yeah,
in the movies, but he
very.
didn't have that. Ethan and anyone down the line in coming generations won't have that chance.
Right. So I think I guess my thread is, Leonard still, when I get with that 10 years, is he's gone, but he's not completely gone because you see his impact in these new incarnations,
He's never really gone, as long as
No,
we remember keep him in
but
our
as
heart.
long as we remember him, right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think people have learned more about two. I think Leonard set the standard high and perhaps impossible and for some people, but and by personal choice, of fan interaction. He was very fan friendly. Now everyone has a bad day, everyone can get impatient every day, but I think a lot of people in fandom saw how he interacted with fans and how he prioritized fans in many respects, and even with his, people say love-hate relationship with Spock, with the hate, and that's too strong a word even, the less than enthusiastic years with Spock in terms of Leonard say did not last as long as some people think. Oh, Leonard always hated Spock. And this was because he was trying to develop a career and a
Right,
persona on Spock. It
right.
wasn't that he hated Spock. He regretted, you know, calling that biography "I'm Not Spock." He said that was stupid. I shouldn't have done it. In fact, my editor told me not to do it because it'd be taking the wrong way, and it was. So I guess the other thing that I think people maybe appreciate more, and maybe not realize as part of Leonard's legacy, is the importance of the fans. I think before the Leonard came along, and even Adam will attest to this. Perhaps to his own detriment. Dad was going to pay attention to the fans. Even if
Right.
it
Not
meant that wasn't the best thing for the family. So there was a downside to that in many respects.
which,
But I think he
to
set
his
the
honesty,
bar.
he gets into in the For the Love of Spock, his
Yeah,
documentary, and he's got his book out now, the human, the
yes.
most human, the most
The
human,
human. The
yeah,
most human, yes.
book. Yeah,
And Adam will freely admit his ambivalence toward, both his dad and to Spock, but, he'll get more into that. He did, very kindly, sign his copy to me, "Thanks for everything." So
yeah,
that was very, very
yeah.
sweet, Adam. But anyway, so I think they're realizing, if not on one level, on another level, that his persona is here in these other incarnations, that his standards he set in terms of recognizing that fans had a lot to do with why Star Trek is still with us 60 years hence.
Mhm.
Great writing, great showrunners, great this, but the fans. And I think he saw this maybe even before some other people did, that, we won't name names. So I think
Okay.
that's there. And I also think he's still with us in that, and what he can still speak to us, it was his philanthropy. There is a Leonard Nimoy Thalia Theater in New York City that you can still go and enjoy
Mhm.
great theater with. There is the Nimoy Theater on, yes, on Westwood Boulevard.
Oh,
That
okay.
you
Yes,
can
I haven't been
still,
there yet. I was thinking of the Westwood, the Leonard and Susan Nimoy, the theater at the observatory here in LA.
oh yes.
Yeah,
Well, there's another,
the
yeah,
Event Horizon Theater there, and he funded and
yes.
did the documentary about how they enlarged the observatory amazingly, going
Correct. They made a significant donation to the restoration of the Griffith Observatory. And then the Nimoy Theater, which of course came to pass after Leonard's passing. But see, here are all these venues that are still delighting and entertaining us that had its core in Leonard Nimoy.
hmm Yeah, yeah. Let me look in here and see what we've got. Okay, hey, analysis. Uh, don't want to sound cliche, but as a neurodivergent man, I'm thankful for Mr. Nimoy's portrayal of Spock. When I heard about his death when he died years ago, it did hit me. Yeah, yeah. As Spock hit so many people, so many different. It's one of those things of you don't when you throw you don't know the ripple effect. You throw the stone out there, and you don't know where those ripples are gonna, how far they're gonna go, and who they're going to touch. Um, let's see. Oh, and okay, analysis. Let you take the ball and run with it here for a minute. Also read I Am Spock and know that he had a rocky history with his most famous character, Spock, and Star Trek fans in general. But I mean, we've always been kind of nutty. Uh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And
Uh,
again, that period where he was distancing himself was not nearly as long as the periods
right.
where he embraced it.
It's what and the whole wherever they were in their, I hate to say this, their niche in Hollywood or their niche in their profession, it hit all the cast that way. Star Trek was such a out of the blue new paradigm that
Hmm.
to be in the current mode, you did not want to get stereotyped. It's like, well, the good news is you've done a hit. The bad news is you're going to be remembered for all this for time and nothing else.
Mhm.
From Shatner on down, and Gene, they all were dealing with the monster because it didn't sustain them. They weren't all instantly rich. They couldn't all retire and do their pet projects. They all had to go out and work, and they were these demigods that still had to pay their mortgage for that first 10 years. Right. And they all found their way. Everybody found their way eventually to live the icon's life instead of the working actor just trying to get my next job, but everybody sees me as a doctor or an engineer or a Scots, whatever. And yeah.
Herb Bennett called it the Star Trek curse,
Yeah. But every cast after that has benefited from that. Oh, you were talking about, Zach and Ethan. Mm-hmm. I would say what the franchise, it was such a strong portrayal that then when they tweaked it, like for Tim playing Tuvok or Jolene playing T'Pol or whatever down the line, it was such that whatever you bounced off in contrast, a woman, a female Vulcan, or a full-blood Vulcan, or whatever, that you had that. Scott's like me, 10 years, whoa, I remember the day he passed. It impacted me heavily. My dad was also suffering from COPD. That's the other thing, just the awareness that he brought to, sadly, but if there was a tiny silver lining, it was he upped the attention spent,
Yes, he was a big advocate for not smoking in the final years of his life because he realized that was a problem. And smoking certainly 30 years. He had quit the last 20, 25, but the damage was done. And I had lunch with Susan Nimoy several years ago following his passing, and she said, Bonnie, his heart was good. His mind was good. He just had no lungs.
Yeah.
And just tragic. Anecdotally, he also referenced at one point that he probably did himself no favors the years in the dark room with all the chemicals when he was and he said he could stay in there for hours and hours on end, and he was
breathing all that. Well, thanks, Carl, for doing this. This is one of those deals. What was ironic to me, and I wrote it 10 years ago, and I hadn't thought about all this until just now. I wrote a special piece for the Titan magazine, Trek magazine, about, and I'm not usually good at this, but I actually had one of those moments where, D had always been my favorite, and of course we all love Spock, but when you had your favorites, but I was thinking about how you wouldn't have had as much, Spock and Leonard helped D and McCoy become more of an entity because they had they found that chemistry really quickly and bounced off each other. And as much as we'd say Kirk Spock and Shatner and Nimoy, it's not that Leonard had to go, make sure that D had his space with the three of them and the whole, the triad and the trinity of Star Trek and all that dynamic. But, Leonard enjoyed, they had a lot of fun giving back and forth with that. And when they were together, but it just made me think about how much Spock was Spock, but also how much he gave everyone else to bounce off. And it didn't have Shatner and Kirk also, but it really helped elevate D's game, and how there wouldn't have been as much D and McCoy without Spock being there to bounce off from.
Right.
Anyway.
Kind of the core from which you could take things in other directions. Yeah.
But in the big picture, the day he passed, because I wasn't clued into anything, and I remember hearing that he'd been in the hospital and that he went home, and they were having some goodbye pictures as they wheeled him out of the hospital. And what we didn't know at the time was he was going home to die. Basically,
right.
It was like there was no point in being in the
hospital. He chose that. Yes.
Yeah. And then his last tweet about life is like a garden, and but the morning one of my friend Lee, texted me and said, "I'm so sorry to hear about Leonard Nimoy." And I was at the opening day of my business coach, my entrepreneur coach, and I've been dancing with it, trying to get things juggled in life and all that. But I was finally saying, this is the year I'm going to start my company that's going to get into background Star Trek, and I'm going to have it be a company that actually made money, and but have it be something fun, and hopefully
Mhm.
wouldn't feel, so everything, the year I started to develop Portal 47 at the conference that I was at, where I was going to start, I'd paid for the coach and I was going to be there and I was interacting with other people. And that was the morning that Leonard passed. And it threw me, and
Mhm.
I had to get outside to answer texts and make some phone calls, and people
Mhm.
were calling me and the phone blew up. But after about a minute or two, I was like, wow, what an omen. I'm going to, I don't think Leonard
Mhm.
is talking to me, but I'm going to take this as an omen that this is, I'm doing the right thing and that this is going to be successful. And, it was almost
Mhm.
kind of like a, you know, attaboy. Anyway, it was just weird, but you know what I'm saying. It
No,
was just
indeed I do.
the
Indeed I do.
timing of
It
it.
was a transitional moment for both him and you in some
Yeah.
ways, you
Oh,
know.
but I really, and I didn't feel this even when, Gene's passing was, oh my gosh, but it was before I was even working on the companion book. And then Dee's was very sad. I can't believe I didn't see you. I didn't know you then, but in North
Mhm.
Carolina at a little con when Dee passed, and
I
we were
knew the
talking about
people
this stuff.
who ran that con who were with you during
We were
that.
literally getting ready to go on stage to have the
Mhm.
opening ceremonies, and Janet came and said,
Mhm.
come over here, away from the mob, and sit down. And she said, I just saw where I just heard that DeForest Kelly passed, and I was like, oh, and that's the one that hit me. And then we went in and told the crowd, and we had a moment of silence for Dino.
Oh,
But when
sure.
Leonard passed, it was like I really felt like there was a shift in the universe, like the greater universe. It was really
Mhm.
strange, and
Mhm.
in a good way. But it was like, oh, it was like when you feel when your first parent, you lose your first parent,
Mhm.
and your life all has always been your mom and dad there. I mean, hopefully, or
Mhm.
someone in those roles. But when the first one of them passed, and that's the way. Not to make it big, but that's the way that day felt for me. I felt like Star Trek and the world, because Leonard Spock transcended Star Trek, much less Leonard. But
Mhm.
anyway,
You
um,
you have this unrealistic thing that they're always gonna be there, and then you get the reality check,
and
and that's with
in your
your
mind,
parents or with people like this, yeah.
and it happened. I think people said, "Oh, he's in the hospital. Oh, he's going home," and no one was thinking what that you know
Mhm.
that can mean good things, or it can mean maybe something not so good. And yeah, so
Mhm.
again, yeah, my figure, it's the 10 years dawned on me just a couple of years ago. Sean says, I wonder how much confusion Leonard McCoy caused at the time. Not quite if your name is Robert, you're hired for Voyager. Yeah, that's right. Three Roberts on Voyager. Um,
Well, that's
yeah,
right, and even Nimoy was considered a very unusual name. We're used to it, but I remember the buttons coming out saying, "What's a Leonard Nimoy?" And it was because, that came out in the '60s because it was kinda like when Renee Zellweger first came out. People couldn't wrap themselves around the name, and Nimoy is not a Smith, Jones, or Johnson name,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. So Melanie's saying, what was the other poster you're dorming in? Our Gang?
yes,
It was?
it
Yeah,
was. Uh-huh. Spanky and alfalfa and all that. I don't
yeah,
know what my thinking was in having that up. I knew more what my thinking was in having Spock up.
yeah. Well, it's good. A lot of folks. Thank you guys for hanging with us today with our delay. For one thing, I was going to start later intentionally, and then we had a last minute, a little restream surprise that I wasn't aware of. But I've learned. I learned at the expense of you all waiting, everybody waiting 20 minutes or whatever it was.
Yes, very nice of you. Thank you. Appreciate your
Uh,
interest.
my figure is saying these are excellent photos, so thank the lady there. Um,
Oh, yes,
I
indeed.
should say, everybody, that I actually got to know Bonnie through the Con of Wrath, because she was a Con of Wrath Survivor fan, and is a producer backer. Thank you again for that, but also, and a longtime Portal 47 member. But
Mhm.
she sat down and did camera for the Con of Wrath, and that's in the works too. So as you all know, so I'm just getting on to, everybody loves the photos. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I have a million more that for which there is no time, and rightfully so.
Dave, Dave, I mean, we're not matching them, spin for spin here. Dave is loving, and I'm going to assume this wow is for another photo.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Yes, everybody does.
Remember.
Oh, when you were at Titan, what division? P, I wonder. Thank you, Sherry Mabaloni. Everybody remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on the YouTube, on the subscribe the channel. Oh, hey, Jesse. I miss paper and stamp days. I know there was things moved a little slower in those days. Yeah.
And you had to ask your parents for permission to use the stamp. I mean, the stamp box in their home, when I was 9, 10 years old, that was sacred. You had, Mama, can I get a stamp, to mail a letter to NBC or my cousin Kara or whatnot?
You're writing to who? You're doing what now? Yeah.
Right.
It was like getting a phone call filtered or something. Yeah.
That's right. And I had a 50-50 chance of no being the answer to the 8-cent stamp, Anyway. But and in the vein of the magazines, when there was a Leonard Nimoy commemorative issue that came out, if any of you have that, yeah, about a third of the photos in there from my collection, and they credited me on most of them. So all that collection paid off. Yeah.
Yes. I think maybe I helped get you fixed up with them or something.
You did. Yeah. I didn't get rich, but I got fixed up with them. Yeah.
Well, it was nice to share, as the old commercial.
It was, and I appreciated the opportunity to contribute. But
there you go.
that's just to link some things here. If you have that magazine, you might want to flip through, and you can see some of the things that I had. But
I should sing this. Sherry Ma Baloney here is a North Carolina. It's a Tar Heel too. In fact, she was sharing with different groups in my communities about going up and helping with some of the flood relief.
Oh, wonderful.
Does Western North Carolina have, I almost said in the Panhandle, but it's not a Panhandle, but does Western North Carolina have a nickname besides Western North Carolina?
Appalachia.
Well, that's
yeah, no, but that's used regionally too. I mean, you're either on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, or you're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, or the Smoky Mountains. So you would refer to Blue Ridge, Smoky, Appalachia. This doesn't have a. And contrary to popular belief, a lot is being done for Western North Carolina, and I've got to give major props to. I'm not getting political, but that work started immediately after that, because I know
it was just tiny little roads and inlets, and the mud. I mean, that's why the damage was there. If it had been a more accessible area, the water would have dispersed, and it wouldn't have been. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
It's with the magnitude of it. I mean, they refer to it as kind of like the fires out in California, although they happen with some more frequency than flooding in the western part of the state, nowhere near a main body of water.
How do you have? It's like having floods in mountains. How does it? What is that? But it's because the channels of the little snaky backwood, the hills and hollers. Is exactly. Well, yeah. If you dump a lot of water up there where it's not used to being, that's
correct. And that's why the devastation was so unprecedented, was because the event was so unprecedented. And how do you prepare for something that had never, ever, ever happened?
Well, how do you prepare for 80-mile-an-hour winds, fire winds?
Correct.
You can cut all the fire berms and trenches you want and have all the water you can do all that. But if you let it, once it gets past the little, anyway.
Yes, but we are appreciative of the donations and the help that have come in, as I'm sure the California comparables are.
Well, I saw people saying, well, they've forgotten all about North Carolina while California gets the attention. I'm like, well, no, that shouldn't happen. We're big enough to attend and get to deal with both. Anyway. So Sherry's saying that she saw him read some poetry in Charlotte in the 80s and 90s.
Wow, good. That would have been wonderful. I did go see him at some colleges in North Carolina, University of North Carolina at Greensboro. He came there, Atlantic Christian College, And I remember him being somewhat facetious and going, "What do you learn specifically at a Christian college?" And I think he was just trying to open up the gates
Just
for
tweak
discussion
everybody a
there.
little bit
Yes,
and do that.
yes.
Yeah. So
Well,
here's
wasn't mean spirited at all. It
yeah,
was,
yeah.
tell me what this is about. But I went to go see him there. But I've seen him at a poetry. But of course, in the '80s, early '90s, how do you get the word out unless the word was out
Yeah.
locally? You
Yeah.
didn't always know
Yeah.
about these things.
So Timothy's saying, you like acting, directing, photography, but what about the Ballad of Bilbo? Did you have his albums?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And I think he was amused by it. I think he was the first person to say he was singing was not his. And his other thing was, I'm a poor draftsman, and by that he meant artist. He
Hmm.
couldn't, so he knew those were his two weak. But hey, there was some pressure from Dot and from Spock's popularity to let's get some some albums out that can perhaps capitalize on
Hmm.
this, and you can, you know, um,
Because
so
in Dot Records, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because he did the Mr. Spock's music from outer space, which Gene, I was looking for our own copies, but Bob Justman and Herb Solo had the thing there where Gene was like, hey, you're using Spock to promote your own album, and we should be getting, studio, and we should all be getting part of this album. And he fought him about that. I forget now how that came out, but so then they're like, well, let's do some that have nothing to do with Spock and Star
Exactly,
Trek. Right.
exactly.
Back in the
Mhm.
day.
Back in the day, yes.
So yeah. Bilbo Baggins. P is saying Nimoy was in Transformers the movie along with Orson Welles. Wow, Orson Welles was in. Okay,
Is he still alive? Ooh.
yeah.
Um, well,
See,
one reason Leonard Nimoy was in Transformers was that
here's.
his wife, Susan Bay, cousin is Michael Bay, who
Oh, I never put that together, but yeah, okay.
Susan Bay Nimoy and Michael Bay are cousins. So there was a
Admiral
lot.
Roland.
That's
She's in
right.
Star Trek as a view screen
That's
admiral
right.
who was
But
not a
that,
bad admiral. She was a good admiral.
yeah. She enjoyed doing that. She enjoyed it. But that was the connection with Transformers. So
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, William. The Bangles music video. He was driving the car. Yeah.
yes, and he did that as a favor to who is the lead single of the singer of the Bangles?
Susanna Hoffs.
Yes, because and Adam could probably speak to this. I think she and Adam were friends, or they were acquaintances. There was some
Okay.
familial connection that got him into the Bangles video.
Okay. Well, and I've gone blank on what's her name from not the B-52s. I've gone blank. She's one of the view screen people at the beginning of Star Trek 4 talking about the catastrophe on Earth and on their ship and the losing power. Then they have all the people popping in on the screens at Earth.
Oh! I know who you're talking about.
She's brunette. Someone's gonna jump in and say,
Yes, because I have a photo of him with her,
not one
of
of the
Leonard with her.
Go-Go's. Yeah.
Um,
There's a photo of him and her on set together where she's got her Starfleet.
yes,
They're shooting
yes.
her. Yeah.
Jane Weedland.
Yes. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, we think alike here. We meet, brother. Yeah. He's not really gone as long as we remember him. Absolutely. This is
Yes.
what I'm saying, P. He got criticized for Shekinah. I remember he went after Kirstie Alley for her criticisms of it. Oh, okay.
I don't remember, I'm not denying, but I don't remember Kirstie Alley being particularly, it was more the Jewish establishment that was taking Leonard to task because he was promoting God as female. And that did not
Fly
play
well.
well and more conservative
Mm-hmm.
congregations.
Yeah.
I remember more about that. The Kirstie Alley thing was he was frustrated that the negotiations bogged down with her to do Star Trek 3. And so I don't know if there was some overlap there that you're alluding to,
Yeah.
but there were separate um, problems there.
Thank you, Joel. I mentioned Tuvix and I mentioned to Paul, but yes, to Lynn. Come on, Larry, get with the 2020s here. To Lynn on Lower Decks, obviously, and Gabrielle
Mhm.
Louise being able to do what she did there and do it as just animation. You know, I was thinking here, Melanie, about every time I hear and I think about not just Spock but Leonard and bitter dregs
Oh,
and
yeah.
knowing how self-deprecating he was about his music.
Mhm.
It's like I'm surprised he didn't have a album called Bitter Dregs or
Well,
something.
that's true. And this may have been the origins of him feeling more secure about getting into poetry. I mean, maybe this was, I don't know whether he had been doing some poetry privately and thought he'd test a few of these poems, run that by the establishment to see if they could air or be used in an episode, or whether or not some minor success of
Yeah.
having them used in an episode inspired him to write more poetry.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if he was already down that road a little bit. But I mean,
Yeah.
he was having to it's hard when you're working and you're trying to build a career and you've got family and everybody's depending on you to put food on the table when you're just an actor and to
Hmm.
indulge your other passions. It's like I got to find something that brings if it brings some money in, well, sure, but
Right.
which is part of the reason why he was doing the photography. It was like, well, here's something I do want to spend
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
on.
And
um
learned that directing and producing was where some of the real money was.
right, long term and yeah, Frank, and you're
Correct.
not, as my business coach, famous business coach now, Melissa McFarlane, always used to say, you're not the dancing monkey. You can have some control over your own business and income without having to perform for everybody else.
Yes.
For the job, not perform, but perform just to get the job and then perform
Right.
the bill.
Right.
Yeah. Talking here about they're talking about how when he died they couldn't help with surgery, and yeah, he had just it was too late. He had done it for a year.
With the
Yeah.
combination of
Oh,
the number
Derek,
of
I'm so
years
sorry.
and then his getting older, it was an
Yeah,
older. I do get a twinge every now and then, though, when I see
sorry.
these new COPD medications on television, the advertisements
Mhm.
for them going, could that have maybe extended things a little? You couldn't
Yeah,
replace lung tissue, but could
yeah.
that have perhaps given him some relief, with these new
And this
medications?
yes. Yeah. And there you go, Scott. Sometimes if
Yeah.
people did quit years ago, they still you the damage has been done if it takes a while longer to show to surface. Um, yeah. Well, there you go. My figure. Good for you. And you can you did it. If it's because of Leonard, then there you go. There's one.
Absolutely. Bravo.
Absolutely one. Yeah. Of course, he smoked. You get the pictures. Jimmy's smoking. Dee's smoking. It was I mean, it's what you did, and nobody thought about it. I mean,
Well,
it's
even on the television commercials of the day, the
no,
doctors were smoking. Four
yeah,
out of five doctors recommend Camels. I mean, it
smoother on
literally,
your throat. Yeah, nobody ever.
exactly.
You're putting like you don't inhale smoke. You don't have a bonfire or your fireplace. It's but you're gonna put smoke in your body. I just never. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think my dad quit when he wasn't a heavy smoker, but I think it was almost like he was a social smoker. But I remember where he used to keep his cigarettes in the drawer in the bathroom, like right by the door.
Mm.
But I,
Mhm.
I and I remember when they went away, he smoked
Mhm.
he smoked Pall Malls. No, I used to know what he smoked. Anyway, I just remember realizing later on they just went away one day, and I was trying to do archival time history, whatever. And I think he must have quit right about the time the Surgeon General came out and they started putting the note on the six. And I think he
The
went,
labels
"Oh,
on,
I'm supposed to." So I don't think he was really ever addicted to the nicotine because I think he quit
right,
when he said, "You should stop. You should stop."
right.
Anyway,
Leonard or Paul,
talking and then had a good long life after that.
well,
Uh,
good. Good for him. Leonard smoked parliaments most of the time. They were
oh,
parliaments.
wow. See, there you go. Trivia, sad
Mhm.
trivia, but yeah, probably I'm thinking it was yeah. And
He was a chain smoker. I mean, he would put one out, and it's amazing that his voice was able to be
yeah,
sustained through all of that. I mean, it became raspier as he got older because of the emphysema and the bronchial infections and the stuff that tends to go with COPD. But for years, think of all the narration he did.
Mhm.
for documentaries and other things. He kept the voice even with the smoking.
Yeah, and the In Search ofs and all of that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, oh, John, that's kind of an interesting take. The single saddest Trek moment in 60 years. Yeah, well, I'm gonna say with recent memories. I mean, Gene's passing was a shock to people too,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
Dee's passing was a shock to people. But
Yes.
I to hear later on he had stomach cancer, which is like one of the worst to have, and he put up with it, and that he had been caring for Carolyn as she was. I don't know if it was Lou Gehrig's or what the muscular disease she had, and he had
Mm,
been caring for her even as
mhm.
his, he was basically fine until he wasn't with that
Right.
stomach cancer.
And I think a point you've made, Larry, is Leonard's was the first, quote unquote, major passing for which social media was around. So
Yes.
there was a lot more shared outpouring, a lot more, because with Gene and Dee, that wasn't the
Yeah.
case. But with Leonard, it was
And,
on Facebook, it was on Twitter, it was
yeah.
on everything,
And
you know.
even Jimmy passed in like '05, so it was like right before everything
Mhm.
blew up. Facebook.
True.
Um, Here you go, Jesse. You weren't part of fandom. You didn't consider yourself in fandom, but remember how sad to see that he was his past. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He transcended
Mhm.
Trek and pop culture. The Big Bang Theory had a little bit to do with that, getting him out
Mhm.
to a broader audience and all
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Um, oh, I wonder what did I say? Exactly. I probably said a lot and too much fun. Uh, there you go, Jim. A numb feeling for a week. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
Um,
ironically, I was working for a hospice when Leonard passed away, and so I had a little clue
mhm.
about what was going on between what I was hearing from mutual friends and with
Risks.
hospice. But people came by my desk at hospice, and these are people who work with death and dying every day, as did I. And of course, I had pictures of Leonard up at my desk and other things.
Mhm.
And I mean, there was a steady stream of people coming by my desk virtually all day long, and I'll always remember that.
Just the
Condolences. Yeah.
condolences and a pat on the back and, yeah,
Yeah.
how you doing and everything, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, uh, it's it's different, but a little the same when I had a ton of people get in touch with me when we lost Will's ranch house. It was
Absolutely.
buildings, but it felt like a living piece of him, and, yeah, and people knew that you cared, and
That's why I felt I needed to send you a variation of a sympathy card. Remember that the
yes,
mailing I sent you? Yeah.
and thank you. Do I it may just be still sitting you say that. Oh, it's still sitting here.
Oh,
So
really?
this is what Bonnie found this on eBay. It's a movie that's obviously a new tag, but it's a publicity. It's a 1930 Fox publicity. It's really an interesting face. It's reflecting, but
Yeah, great, great photo of him.
really a serious, somber picture of him.
Mhm.
Reflective. Anyway, but so I'll say it. Thank you for that.
Oh,
Um,
you're welcome. More than welcome.
um, I'm just saying, looking on down through here too. Oh, here, Jesse says, I remember asking Mama for stamps too. Stamps are precious.
Thank
Well,
you. It wasn't
you
just my
know,
mean parents.
6 cents, 8 cents when when French fries were 15 cents. 8 cents was something.
Yeah.
Um. Oh wow. Okay, Pete? You worked for Titan. You were an intern in merch. Did you deal with the merch, or so not the magazines so much because that was the people I knew were uh, books and merch. That's interesting. Good to know. Um, yeah, and Sherry is saying still way more to do in Western North Carolina,
Yes,
and
indeed.
going back. Oh, she says that Leonard was at Ovens, not Owens, but Ovens
No, it's
Auditorium.
Ovens. It is Ovens.
Okay.
I don't doubt that. And I know he did a tour through here with William Shatner when they were doing their thing together.
Mhm.
I don't remember what it was called, but it had. But again, a lot of times you didn't hear about things because there was no mechanism by which to hear
Right.
something.
You'd hear about it, or you'd hear about it too late, or whatever.
Yes.
You didn't get to.
Yes, he was at UNC Greensboro in 1976. That's the first time I saw him. Didn't meet him on that occasion, but saw him lecture.
Mhm.
And I think that added to my, if he was going to be a jerk or if he was going to be actually stupid and he really was a good actor playing intelligent, but he came out to a sold out crowd at UNCG in 1976. I was in college, had my spot poster up. Um, he wowed everybody and charmed everybody and was funny and emotional and sweet, and
Yeah.
it just added to your affection for him.
Well, look at Melanie busting out here as a Nimoy documentary. And she sang in choir as a child. He did very well at his bar mitzvah. His grandfather wanted him to play the accordion. Oh, I think yeah, he played guitar a little. I've got those pictures where he's playing in public, even just standing up all by himself. I think I'd read that something about his grandfather and the accordion. It's feeling.
His dad Max said, "You'll
Oh,
always work if you know how to play the accordion." Mhm. His
yeah.
grandfather was a leather cutter. Was a leather cutter.
Oh,
You
okay.
know.
Okay.
hmm
In yeah. Leonard Simon Nimoy. Yeah, a lot of people don't know what his middle name was.
hmm
Oh, he actually said this? They got to this point? Nimoy didn't like Kirsty criticizing his models. He said, "My models are happy. Kirsty is in a gutter somewhere crying her eyes out." Oh, no. Wow.
I
Okay.
got nothing.
Okay. Oh. Well, good for your husband, Jesse. We will all be pulling for him there on both sides. That can't be easy. It's
Mm-mm.
pretty rough. You and I and Will I Think of You, dedicate to his first wife. Oh, well, we're getting into the
Well, the clothes are coming out now.
yeah.
Um, yes. Yes, I will say, and Adam will say this and speak to this I'm not spilling the tea here or anything, that his parents were unhappily married for many years. And so, and
That
that it was,
Adam's parents were unhappily married for a minute. Yeah.
yes, that Leonard and Sandy were his parents, yes, were
Yeah.
unhappy for many, many. So it was not a sudden type of thing, but a decline, and that invariably, inevitably would lead to something, and it did. I won't dwell on that. But Adam has said in both of his books, my parents' marriage just drug on for years and years, and Julie and I were acutely aware of it, and it was almost now these are my words, almost a blessing when, that
Mhm.
conflict um, was no longer there. So it may have appeared sudden to some people when that happened, but it was not sudden in the making. Um,
Yeah. Um, Hey, Melanie, an update on the property and the horses. The horses are fine. The horse vendor, those got out. She had a GoFundMe, Cha Cha and Jigsaw Farms. She had a huge amount. I haven't checked in to see how they're doing. She took in boarding other people's displaced horses, and it helped her with some income too, I think. They did a story, and Rolling Stone did a story about the saved horses of the Palisades, and she wound up with 53 horses, her 10 plus other people's. So I haven't checked in on that. But as far as the property, you asked this. As it turns out, tomorrow, everybody on the foundation and some of the docents are going to go up and see the place for the first time. And we've had rains since, and they were supposed to be chain linking off the actual bits around the fireplaces. It's going to be a rough day tomorrow, but I'm going to go in, and we're spending the afternoon there, and they're going to do some filming for what was going to be our new visitor center film. They've made the decision to save the visitor center, which was Will's garage. That's intact with its second floor, and but the what to do long term is just starting how much and what kind to do with the place. The bottom line is that nobody wants it to just be a glorified hiking trail place with a name on it. We want something there, and we've got collection from the house that was saved, and that needs a display place without being split up. So anyway, there's a lot of that to be done, but I'm just going to be there for the first time, tomorrow with
Oh,
all of
it'll
us.
be tough.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and then we're having a docent meetup that night, and a lot of yeah, and Jennifer Rogers, Will's great granddaughter, who's in both states at both places. And anyway, it's going to be a good day tomorrow, but a really tough one
Yes,
finally.
it will.
But
Okay.
thank you for asking about that, by the way. I didn't mean to deflect from our topic
Mhm.
today.
Well, we'll be thinking about you, Larry.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you. I'll be I'll be doing something. It'll be a little public therapy of my own, a little bit,
Mhm.
like Denise and hers. Uh, uh, yeah. Oh, here Melanie's agreeing with you. You've got all your facts right there, Bonnie. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
I can get it wrong on occasion, not above
Oh
that,
no,
but
we're all doing off the top stuff. So we were saying, was he in Dragnet? It wouldn't surprise me. It's like Dragnet was on so long. Everybody, what did he?
Um, gosh, he did so much episodic television
Yeah,
in the
all the
'60s
westerns and stuff.
prior to Star
Yeah,
Trek. I mean,
yeah,
he was in Twilight Zone, he was in Sea Hunt, he was in Combat, he was in
yeah.
Secret Service, which was a show about submarines. He was in West Point. He was,
Well, didn't he do Virginian and Gunsmoke and it?
he
I
did Gunsmoke. He did the Gunsmoke. Oh gosh, he did Wagon Train. I mean,
yeah,
it was kind of a stable of character actor performers in '60s television who kind of made the rounds. This week they were
yeah.
in Perry Mason, and next week they were in Combat, and the next week they were in
And
Twilight Zone.
Dee's the
And
same way, and Jimmy's the same way, and
yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes,
And Walter always playing the Russian
exactly.
transfer
And of
student.
course, Dragnet, I can't recall, but it would not surprise me. And of course, most people, well, I won't say most people that are a student of any of this, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy did appear together in an episode of The Man from Uncle,
Yeah,
and each of them forgot about it until fans kept asking them
yeah.
about it, and then they both kind of went, "Oh yeah, 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 we did."
It's on YouTube. It's like just a kind of momentary scene where their characters overlap. Now, was that the one that was called the Project Vulcan affair? There's an
No,
episode called the Project Vulcan, but I think that's something else.
I think it is a different one.
It was a time when people
I
loved
could
the
stand corrected, but I want to think it was like Project Strigus or Strigus
That's what I was
affair.
gonna say, and I couldn't think
Yeah,
of it. The Project
yeah.
Strippers affair or something. Yeah.
And Werner Klemperer was in that as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Colonel
Colonel
Klink.
Clink without
Yeah.
German accent.
Yes.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, and I appreciate everybody. Oh, and okay, my figure. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys. Um, um, yeah, thank you, Sherry, too, and thank you, everybody. Everybody's chiming in here. I didn't mean to make it about that and me, but you ask. So, yeah, and this is what we're just saying, Melanie. It was the times. You were a working actor, and there were only 3 networks, but there were tons of 1-hour drama. There wasn't reality shows stealing bits from writers and directors and actors,
Mhm.
and not getting paid for it.
Right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, Glenn says he remembers his JFK story when he drove a taxi.
Yes. Leonard was driving a taxi cab in um, when he came to California, and he had just gotten married and had 2 young kids, and he serviced fish tanks in doctors' offices. He drove a cab, and he picked up JFK one night. This is when he was still a senator, from
Right.
Massachusetts.
Well, if he was president, there'd be a little bit of a
Yeah, yeah, but yeah,
access and transportation would both be a little different, but yes.
yes, exactly. But he remembers most that JFK never carried money on him, and so he had to go in to where he dropped him off to go get some money to pay him because he had no money on him. So that's a little trivia about JFK, actually. But they both got to talking about Massachusetts because Leonard recognized him, and no one in California was recognizing this guy.
Mhm.
And Leonard turned around and said, "What are you doing here, Senator?" And JFK's like, "What?" He
Yeah.
somebody recognized him, and then Leonard said, "I'm from Boston," and the two of them, got to converse, and
There you
then he
go.
had to go in to pay him.
That's great. That's great. Well, listen, Bonnie, I've taken up your time, and I got a late start today, so we should probably wrap it up. But thanks much for coming on, and again, the personal people hear so much and they hear it secondhand, or even when it's firsthand, it's always through that Star Trek lens, or maybe a high end Hollywood lens or something. And I knew that you were a fan, but I like that devotee, and to the point where they all recognized it, and everybody that worked with Leonard, and that your role in putting some of those shows together uh, is there. So I knew you're a unique and special voice to come in and remind everybody about.
Oh, God, thank you, Larry. And I appreciate everyone's interest. I mean, the contributions and the questions and everything are great. Leonard would be honored that, seriously, he would be honored that people were still talking about him in this depth, that we're not
Mhm.
immediate family or something like that. He was a very modest guy. He really was. He was always surprised when someone would come to see him, and he'd always ask where you were from, like if you were backstage or something. And they'd say Maryland or Florida. And he'd go, "Really?" And he meant it. You came from this place to see me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't know how much of that became affectation later, but at least early on, that was quite sincere. And I'll close with saying he wasn't a perfect person. He wasn't. He had his foibles, and he was very open about several of them. Um, but he was an extraordinary person. So
yeah.
you can be both in this world.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And it feels like a lot of the folks connected to Star Trek are in that same boat too. They gave us so much and laid so much groundwork and created some new. I keep using that word, paradigms in
Hmm.
entertainment before they and we even knew what they had done, and he was caught up in that. But yeah, did have a good long, as much as we mourn the passing, did have a good long life and was able to give us so much. So thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so
Indeed.
much for joining today. And do you want to hang on, or do you want to? What, I'm going to wrap up here, or I can.
Oh, it's your show, Larry. What
Well, I
what
hate to make you hang on just for a little bit here, but I'll say our goodbyes and
Okay.
I'll finish out. So thanks again.
Thank you, Larry. Uh,
Okay.
Hope to see you soon.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, everybody. I just want thank you. Thanks to Bonnie for doing that and all that. I've got my regular things to say, but I just want to let everybody know this is our last Tuesdays for a couple of weeks. The cruise is going to take over, and then my day after cruise. So it'll be we won't be back on Tuesdays live until the 11th. Okay, just to throw that out there. And I may be a little on the road when I do that show too, but I will be back in touch by then. So again, thanks everybody for doing it and being here and being in the chat. That was a great reflection. We had a lot to reflect on, and it's just because people, I say this with the things like when you watch a series, you watch DS9 in the 90s at the original running, and your life changes and media changes, and you look at things through different eyes. And it's the same way with people. And even when people pass, and sometimes it's good to check in. That's the good thing about milestones and anniversaries. They kind of make us refocus, even if we're having a party or something, or we're buying different napkins for the 10th anniversary of, you know what I mean. I don't mean about someone's passing, but just having these markers in time at one hand feels arbitrary, but then it's a good poke. It's like setting a timer for your own reminders, if that's what that works for you. And thanks everybody for doing that. And of course, I once again thank everybody in my Patreon. Yes, our TTLers, Chuck A. and James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Halbert Gunnjonson, Lawrence Todd, Justin Weir, Mitch Keith. I knew I was going to do that someday. Mitch Keith, Andrew Jazimski, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. And I'll add, I haven't put you on yet, Brandon, for the new month, but I'll go ahead and say Brandon Cowles. Thank you, too. And our live wires, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Greg Wickstrom, let me finish this, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, James Durovich, Dave Gregory, Dan Leckie, and Casey Shafsky. I'm just going to say, I got too demonstrative, that it's very easy to join us. Patreon.com/Trekland Live, $5 and $10 for the shout out and for access to, I know, access to the early years of Portal 47. Nothing wrong with them. It's just further back in time before I catch it up. So thank you. Love to have you in supporting us. I should also say that, not to be confused with, if you want to be part of the new Patreon for the Trek Files, which had a new episode drop today, we're having a community based around Trek Files. Finally, it's over at the Roddenberry Mission Log Discord. You join the Roddenberry, the Mission Log Patreon for $1 a month, and you get access to all the Roddenberry shows and content and community over there. And that's where the Trek Files is, since it's a Roddenberry show. So I got tired of having it be crickets. There's never anyone to talk about Trek Files. We tried for years to figure out how to do it. Discord's what we settled on. So I've now done 2 live 4 p.m. hours over on the Discord channel for Trek Files. You can be there too if you join the Roddenberry Patreon for $1 a month. And then you can come in and be part of the ongoing conversations at Trek Files and everything else Roddenberry, all the other shows and podcasts. And then be there for the 4 p.m. Mondays Trekophiles Tonight live show for an hour or so, which is, Discord's video is glorified Zooming too. So look for that. We won't be back. I'm skipping that for 2 weeks, and it'll actually won't be back until that, the 10th? We are, I think. Yes. So Monday the 10th is the next time I'll be back with a Trekophiles Tonight there at Discord 5 for the Roddenberry, just for the Trek Files Discord folk. Trek Files, the show, is still accessible, of course, wherever you find your fine podcasts, or you can see the whole batch at thetrekfiles.com on Memory Alpha now. It's all easily accessible. And today's drop is a special edition of they saw it live, but you are now getting to my 30 minutes sit down with Christopher Lloyd at Trek to San Francisco. And we talk about not Doc Brown, not Professor Plum, not Professor Doom, Dr. Doom. No, we talk about, of course, Cruge and working with Leonard, speaking of the devil. It was a lot of fun, But as the year goes on, I hope that you call me. Let's get in touch. Let's do a Trekland Trek for you, your own customized away mission around. TreklandTreks.com. Read all about it. Let me know what you think, okay? And, of course, all the socials, Larry Nemecek on Twitter and Blue Sky. This needs updating. Larry Nemecek's Trekland. YouTube, please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Facebook and Instagram, and portal47.net. I have news. Portales, we do have a guest this month, thanks to my going to Gallifrey this last weekend. I'll be letting everybody know about that. It's another niche, another interesting niche of backstage Trek life that you don't think about, but that affects millions of you and sets off some controversies at times. I'm going to be talking about the DVD world and the DVD producers and bonus features and and the remastered editions of the original series and Next Generation. So I can't wait to bring that to you. That's for the Portales, and if you're interested, check it out at portal47.net. That's going to do it for today. Thanking Bonnie again so much for being here with us. And 10 years sneaks up on you. But it's worth doing it, as we do with our anniversaries, and especially of our founders. It's worth the time to take and reflect on what it means for current Star Trek. Everybody, thanks so much. Hey, listen, have you heard about the quademic? I'm about to travel, and you can bet that I'm thinking about it. So please stay healthy, do all the things. Stay woke, check the sources, boy. And Trek well, everybody.